Most killers have a motive: revenge, greed, jealousy, but some kill for no reason at all. Their victims chosen at random, their crimes unpredictable, their minds unreadable. Tonight, we'll dive into the terrifying world of the most chilling kind of murderer, the ones you can't see coming. These are the top 5 random serial killers. The 1, Jack the Ripper. During the wave of murders that terrified England in the autumn of 1888, the killer known as Jack the Ripper sent chilling letters to journalists and officials, mocking them for their inability to stop the killings. One letter even arrived with a human kidney attached. According to allthat'sinteresting.com, after murdering at least 5 women in 1888, Jack the Ripper seemed to vanish without a trace. He left behind very few clues, and investigators have spent more than a century trying to uncover his identity. Although he left little evidence, Jack the Ripper did send several disturbing letters throughout his spree. These letters revealed glimpses of his personality, handwriting, and possible motives. In fact, the London police received hundreds of letters claiming to be from Jack the Ripper. Many were quickly dismissed as hoaxes, but a handful appeared far more convincing. Among them were the now infamous Dear Boss letter, the Saucy Jackie postcard, the From Hell letter, and several others. Here are the most unsettling letters that raised more questions about Jack the Ripper than they ever answered. The Dear Boss letter, Jack the Ripper's first message. By late September 1888, the Whitechapel district of London was gripped by fear. 2 women, Mary Ann Nichols and Annie Chapman, had been brutally murdered by an unknown attacker. Although Whitechapel was a dangerous place, especially for prostitutes like Nichols and Chapman, the savage nature of their deaths deeply alarmed police. Then, on September 27, 1888, the Central News Agency received a letter claiming to be from the killer himself. The letter referenced a suspect at the time, a man named John Pizer, known as Leather Apron. Its contents read, "Dear boss, I keep hearing the police have caught me, but they can't fix me yet. Ha ha! I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games." I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough. Ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. At first, police dismissed the letter as a hoax, but then more women were murdered. The Saucy Jackie postcard. Just 3 days after the Dear Boss letter was received, Jack the Ripper struck again, this time twice in one night. In the early hours of September 30th, 1888, Elizabeth Stride was found with her throat cut in Dutfield's yard. Just 45 minutes later, Catherine Eddowes, the Ripper's 4th victim, was discovered butchered in Mitre Square. The Eddowes murder was especially brutal. Her throat was slashed, her abdomen ripped open, her left kidney and much of her uterus removed, and parts of her face mutilated. Most chillingly, her earlobe had been cut off, just as the Ripper had threatened in the Dear Boss letter. The next day, another letter arrived. This one, dubbed the Saucy Jackie postcard, reached the Central News Agency on October 1st, 1888. It appeared to be smeared with blood and read, "I was not codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number 1 squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Ha ha, not the time to get ears for police. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again, Jack the Ripper." This postcard convinced police it might actually be genuine. It mentioned a double event, which matched the murders of Stride and Eddowes, and it also referenced details not yet released to the public. Handwriting analysis even suggested the postcard was written by the same person as the Dear Boss letter. The From Hell letter, sent with a human kidney. 2 weeks later, on October 16th, George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received yet another letter. Known as the From Hell letter, it read, "From Hell. Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." The letter came with a gruesome package, half of a human kidney. Dr. Thomas Openshaw examined it and concluded it belonged to a woman about 45 years old who suffered from Bright's disease, a kidney condition often linked to alcoholism. Victim Catherine Eddowes was 46 and known to be a heavy drinker, making the connection all the more horrifying. The From Hell letter remains one of the most terrifying Ripper correspondences ever received, the final murder and vanishing of Jack the Ripper. On November 8, 1888, Jack the Ripper claimed his last known victim, Mary Jane Kelly. Her murder was the most brutal of all. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, with body parts scattered around her room. And then, the Ripper vanished. To this day, his identity remains unknown. Over the years, suspects have ranged from Polish barber Aaron Kosminski to Liverpool cotton merchant James Maybrick, but no definitive evidence has ever been found. What we do have, however, are the letters, some real, some likely hoaxes. Modern studies suggest Dear Boss, Saucy Jackie, and another letter called Moab and Midian were likely written by the same hand. But whether that hand belonged to Jack the Ripper himself or simply a journalist trying to sell newspapers is still debated. In fact, some believe the letters were created by reporters like Thomas Bulling or Fred Best of the Central News Agency, who may have faked them for publicity. Best allegedly even confessed to writing the Dear Boss and Saucy Jackie letters in 1931. Even so, if any of the letters were truly from Jack the Ripper, they remain the closest thing we have to his voice, and perhaps the only clues to his dark identity. Number 2, H.H. Holmes Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as H.H. Holmes, was a con artist and bigamist who was one of America's first serial killers. Sometimes referred to as the Beast of Chicago, Holmes is believed to have killed somewhere between 20 and 200 people. He killed many of his victims in a specially constructed home, which was later nicknamed the Murder Castle. Apprehended in 1894, he was hanged for his crimes 2 years later. His grisly crimes inspired the best-selling book, The Devil in the White City. H.H. Holmes was born Herman Webster Mudgett, circa May 16, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. Born into an affluent family, Holmes enjoyed a privileged childhood and was said to be unusually intelligent at an early age. Still, there were haunting signs of what was to come. He expressed an interest in medicine, which reportedly led him to practice surgery on animals. Some accounts indicate that he might have been responsible for the death of a friend. Holmes's life of crime began with various frauds and scams. As a medical student at the University of Michigan, he stole corpses and used them to make false insurance claims. Holmes might have used the bodies for experiments as well. In 1885, Holmes moved to Chicago. He soon found work in a pharmacy, using his now infamous alias, Dr. Henry H. Holmes. He eventually took over the business and was later rumored to have killed its original owner. Holmes had a 3-story building constructed nearby, creating an elaborate house of horrors. The upper floors contained his living quarters and many small rooms where he tortured and killed his victims. There were also trapdoors and chutes that enabled him to move the bodies down to the basement, where he could burn the remains in a kiln or dispose of them in other ways. During the 1893 Columbian Exposition, Holmes opened up his home as a hotel for visitors. Unfortunately, many guests didn't survive in what became known as the Murder Castle. Many of these victims, no one knows for certain the total number, were women who were seduced, swindled, then killed. Holmes had a habit of getting engaged to a woman, only for his fiancée to suddenly disappear. Other victims were lured there by the offer of employment. Holmes left Chicago shortly after the World's Fair to continue his schemes, including a plan with an associate named Benjamin Pitezel. They planned for Pitezel to fake his death in order to collect $10,000 from a life insurance company. Jailed at one point for another fraud, Holmes confided in fellow inmate and notorious outlaw Marion Hedgepeth, who knew Holmes as H.M. Howard, about the life insurance scheme. Hedgepeth later helped investigators by revealing details of their discussion. While the authorities eventually identified Howard as Holmes, they didn't catch on soon enough to stop his final murders. Holmes killed Pitezel, and after telling his widow that her husband was still alive and in hiding, convinced her to let him travel with 3 of her 5 children, who also became his victims. After several weeks of outrunning authorities, Holmes was finally apprehended in November 1894. During his time in custody, he gave numerous stories to police, once admitting to killing 27 people. Convicted in 1895, Holmes appealed his case but lost. Estimates of the total number of people Holmes killed range from 20 to as many as 200 victims. Holmes died on May 7, 1896, when he was hanged for the Pitezel murder. Roughly 34 years old at his death, the Beast of Chicago was buried in Philadelphia. Holmes' life as one of America's first serial killers has been the subject of many books and documentaries, including The Devil in the White City, 2003, by Eric Larson. The book has been in the adaptation process for the screen for many years, with Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, and Keanu Reeves all attached at various points. The latest attempt was to create a limited series on Hulu, but the streaming service dropped the project in May 2023. I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing. 3. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a serial killer, rapist, and necrophiliac who admitted to killing 30 women in the 1970s, though some experts believe his actual victim count might be over 100. He was arrested for good in February 1978 and received 3 separate death sentences for the murders of 2 Chi Omega sorority members at Florida State University and a 12-year-old girl. Bundy's charming appearance helped him become somewhat of a celebrity during his trial, and his case has since inspired many novels and movies about serial killers. He was executed in January 1989 at age 42. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Bundy on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. He started life as his mother's secret shame, as his illegitimate birth humiliated her deeply religious parents. Eleanor Louise Cowell, who went by Louise, was 22 years old when she delivered Ted at a home for unwed mothers. Later, Cowell brought her son to her parents in Philadelphia. Ted's birth certificate lists his father as unknown, so his biological father's identity might never be confirmed. However, there are some theories about who he might be. Anne Rule, a co-worker of Ted's and the author of The Stranger Beside Me, suggests Ted's father might have been Lloyd Marshall, an Air Force veteran and Penn State graduate. Other sources say Ted's father is Jack Worthington, and some rumors have it that his father was also his grandfather. To hide the fact he was an illegitimate child, Bundy was raised as the adopted son of his grandparents and was told that his mother was his sister. Cowell moved with her young son to Tacoma, Washington, and in 1951 she married Johnny Bundy. While Ted took his name, he reportedly didn't have much respect for his stepfather, whom he resented for being too uneducated and working class. Johnny and Louise had several children together. From all appearances, Bundy grew up in a content, working-class family. He showed an unusual interest in the macabre at an early age. Around the age of 3, he became fascinated by knives. A shy but bright child, Bundy did well in school, but not with his peers. According to Matt DeLisi, an Iowa State University criminologist who authored the 2023 book Ted Bundy and the Unsolved Murder Epidemic, Bundy also was known to pick apart mice in the woods and try to drown people while swimming or boating. He showed no sense of remorse, guilt, embarrassment, or shame. As a teenager, a darker side of his character started to emerge. Bundy liked to peer in other people's windows and thought nothing of stealing things he wanted. Bundy confessed to murdering 30 women across several states in the 1970s, but experts believe that the final tally might be closer to 100 or more. After years of maintaining his innocence, Bundy's admission of guilt arrived just before his death. It all felt like a ploy to extend his life, said former FBI agent Bill Hagmaier, who spent considerable time with the killer after he'd been caught. His murders usually followed a gruesome pattern. He often raped his victims before beating them to death. Bundy often lured women into his car by pretending to be injured and asking for their help. Their kindness proved to be a fatal mistake. There is some debate as to when Bundy started killing. Most sources say he began his murderous rampage around 1974. Around this time, many women in the Seattle area and in nearby Oregon went missing. Stories circulated about some of the victims last being seen in the company of a young, dark-haired man known as Ted. However, criminologist Matt DeLisi argues in a 2023 book that Bundy likely murdered more than 100 people and started killing in adolescence. Bundy drops a lot of clues that there were way more murders, DeLisi said, later explaining that authorities were woefully unequipped to track Bundy. And the pacing and confidence with which he's killing between 1974 and 1978 indicates there's no way he could have just started. Ultimately, the exact number of women Bundy killed will never be known. On January 24, 1989, Bundy was executed around 7 a.m. at a Florida State Prison in an electric chair, sometimes known as Old Sparky. Outside the prison, crowds cheered and even set off fireworks after Bundy's execution. Some brought frying pans they banged on in celebration and chanted, "Burn, Bundy, burn." 4. Zodiac Killer. Zodiac Killer, unidentified American serial killer who is believed to have murdered at least 5 people in Northern California between 1968 and 1969. An earlier murder, the stabbing death of an 18-year-old college student in Riverside, California in 1966, is also sometimes attributed to the Zodiac Killer. In 1968, a teenage couple was shot to death near their car in a remote area north of San Francisco. 1 year later, another couple was attacked in similar circumstances, though the male victim survived. After the 1969 attack, the killer phoned police to alert them to the crime and to take responsibility for the 1968 murders. Later that year, the Zodiac Killer attacked another young couple, though once again, the male survived. The last known victim, a taxi driver, was shot in October 1969. The murders were the subject of intense investigation and media coverage, particularly because of the killer's taunting letters to newspapers and phone calls to police. His letters, sent from 1969 to 1974, were signed with a symbol resembling the crosshairs of a gun sight and typically began with the phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking." Included among the letters were 4 ciphers or cryptograms, the first of which was sent in 3 parts to 3 Bay Area newspapers in July 1969. Known as the 408 cipher for the number of characters it contained, it was soon decoded by a pair of private citizens. Its message stated in part that, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." Another cipher, the 340 cipher, mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle in November 1969, was finally decoded in 2020 by a team of 3 amateur codebreakers. Its message began, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me." Much remains mysterious about the Zodiac case, not least the issue of when the crime stopped. Crime writer Robert Graysmith argued that the Zodiac Killer remained active through the 1980s and murdered dozens more people, though this view is controversial. During the 1990s, several investigators claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. The suspect most often cited was Arthur Lee Allen, 1933 to 92, a Vallejo, California schoolteacher who had been institutionalized in 1975 for child molestation, though his identification with the Zodiac Killer has never been substantiated. Number 5, David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, born June 1, 1953, Brooklyn, New York, U.S., is an American serial killer who murdered 6 people in New York City in 1976-77. His crimes plunged the city into a panic and unleashed one of the largest manhunts in New York history. Berkowitz was a difficult and occasionally violent child. His erratic behavior, which began after the death of his adoptive mother in 1967, intensified when his adoptive father remarried in 1971 and moved to Florida without him. That year, Berkowitz joined the Army, and he became an excellent marksman before he left the service in 1974. According to Berkowitz's diary, he set some 1,500 fires in New York City in the mid-1970s. Claiming he was driven by demons, Berkowitz attempted to murder a woman in December 1975, but she survived several stab wounds. He then fatally shot a woman in July 1976, and over the next year, he attacked several couples, claiming 5 more victims. During his killing spree, he sent letters to New York newspapers, signing them Son of Sam, a reference to a demon he believed lived inside the black Labrador Retriever owned by his neighbor Sam Carr. However, Berkowitz later admitted that his claims about a demon were made up. Berkowitz was arrested on August 10, 1977, 11 days after his last murder. His capture was the result of careful police work, which involved sorting through a confusing maze of reports of suspicious persons. Ultimately, Berkowitz was identified as the most likely suspect, a theory that was confirmed when his car was found to have received a parking ticket near the scene of one of the shootings. Berkowitz soon confessed, and on May 8, 1978, he pleaded guilty. In June, he was sentenced to 365 years in prison. He became eligible for parole in 2002, but was repeatedly denied release. And that was our look into the top 5 random serial killers. Minds without reason, killers without warning. The scariest part? You can prepare for many dangers in life, but you can never prepare for random. Thank you for watching. If you want more chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time for another descent into true horror.